the Elevation Basketball Podcast. Our mission is to grow the game with meaningful conversations with coaches from all over the world. Give us a shout out on Instagram or Twitter at Elevation B-Ball1. And you can listen to all of our episodes of the Elevation Basketball Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify or Apple iTunes. Thank you for listening to the Elevation Basketball Podcast. And welcome back to the Elevation Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carver, and today, long time trying to get this gentleman on our show, but very excited today to have Mr. Mark Cassio, now of Appalachian State Women's Basketball, formerly of Catholic High School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a very successful high school coach. And Coach, we are so glad and so excited to have you on board, getting to know you a little bit better today. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Like you said, long time coming. I know we've been talking for years, just through text and everything. So just to be able to sit down and talk basketball with you is great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. So, you've got your start at the high school ranks, which is where the majority of our listeners are listening, tuning in from. You were a very successful high school coach. You won a state championship, I believe, at Christian Life Academy. Is that correct? Back in 2012. And then you made the transition over to Catholic high school. And then I just think of Louisiana, New Orleans, that whole area up there. I think Mardi Gras, it's Catholic Central, if there is such a thing. So talk about that, that first initial move. You're a very successful high school coach, and then you go to Catholic high school, and we're trying to replicate that success there as well.
Yeah. So my first head job was actually at another Catholic school, which was a smaller school in at a suburb of Baton Rouge, and then got to Christian Life. And that was a very successful program already. So I was just kind of tasked with keeping that going. And we were fortunate enough, year two, we won a title, like you said. And then the next year we lost at the buzzer in the Final Four. And then my alma mater opened up, which was 5A, which is the highest level in Louisiana. So that was obviously something I couldn't pass up. And we were fortunate enough to go to 3 Final Fours back to back, and couldn't get over the hump, which is one thing that is going to kill me for a long time. But the chance to go to the college level was something that I wanted to do on and off, to be honest with you. Because there's a lot of things I really love about high school basketball, and but the chance to work for Angel at App and the move to North Carolina, so was just something again that I couldn't pass up. And I feel like I've been fortunate enough to have these opportunities where I'm leaving programs better than I found them, but also being able to fulfill my professional goals at the same time.
So a few years back, you're at Catholic high school. You're going to Final Fours. Did you ever dream you'd be at Boone, North Carolina, as a Division I women's coach?
Yeah, I did not, for a lot of reasons. One, I've never, I have coached. In fact, my first job, I coached the boys and the girls team for a season. We had a coach that had to leave at the very beginning of the year, but that was really my only experience coaching girls. And I didn't even know Angel, our head coach, yet. So a couple of years ago, I definitely did not picture myself here, but this transition has been great, mainly just because the community here and the people at App.
It is a phenomenal community. As you know, my daughter does play there, but I can say all the way back to, when she was in the 8th grade and Angel started recruiting her, it just felt different. The family atmosphere up there, it just felt like, my backyard was there, even though it was 2 hours away in Asheville. Very, very welcoming place. Angel's an unbelievable person. So to get a chance to have, Emily play there for you guys is phenomenal. But it's like you said, it's just a great place, man. You take Emily out of it. Heck, I like going to football games up there. It's like going up there. It's just beautiful up there.
Yeah, I'm coming from SEC country. So I grew up, going to LSU football games, and I'm excited to get the game day experience here in Boone. I hear it's great.
It is pretty cool. So if you don't mind, and I don't want to get too personal with it, but how did the transition happen? I mean, you're, like I said, you're the head coach there at Catholic. You're very successful. So how did it get to be where all of a sudden Angel, and now next thing you know, you're her assistant coach?
Yeah, so we met over quarantine, just like most basketball coaches.
Hmm.
We were hopping on Zoom, and we ended up on the same Zoom, and she was presenting some stuff, and I was really impressed with her organization, and she had put together some like daily vitamin stuff for her team, and I found myself like screenshotting it, wanting to kind of replicate it, and then I think it was either the same Zoom or we were on another one together, and I was sharing some stuff. And I think she kind of had the same sentiment of just, I was sharing some drills and small sided games, and that's what she was kind of trending to as well. So, really just found a lot of common ground with how we run a program, I guess, culturally, and then also style of play. We had a lot of commonalities. So, and we had a mutual friend as well that kind of made the connection for us. So we just started talking, and I was sharing some basketball stuff with their program there, and then she had some openings, and once that happened, things moved really quickly, but also very slowly at the same time. So we had kind of talked about the opportunity, and for me to move my family, this decision could be right for me, but wrong for my family, or could be a great opportunity, but just not the right timing professionally. I've had that happen before. But this is one where the more time I had to think about it and go through the process, it just became a no-brainer for not only me, but for my family as well.
I assume you taught class at Catholic.
I did. I taught economics.
Guess what? You're not going to have to do at App State. I assume you're not going to teach any classes.
Yeah, and that's I think as basketball coaches, I love high school basketball. I don't think bigger is always better. And I've had college coaches tell me all the time, like, man, the basketball is basketball. It's all the same. I think if I'm being completely honest, at the high school level, and it's not the teaching, because I really love connecting with the students in the classroom.
Mhm.
It's just you're being pulled in a lot of different directions.
Amen.
And I think my frustration came in is when you're getting pulled in directions that don't affect winning or don't affect, advancing your program or your kids. So I'm a workaholic. I take a lot of pride in what I do. So just being pulled in those other directions and feeling like you're neglecting something else, that was the most difficult part. But the basketball is at the high school level, there's a ton of advantages there too.
I'm a high school athletic director in addition to being the head coach here, and I'm on 4 different state level boards. So I get the feeling, man. I feel like sometimes I'm pulled in every direction known to man, and that's the guilt part of it. Sometimes, like, I'm being asked to do this and I got to do that, and I don't mind doing that, but that has absolutely nothing to do with me coaching this basketball program. So on some level, I feel like I'm neglecting that, at the same token. So I totally get that feeling, and I think I probably never get the chance to coach in college, and that's okay. That's a life decision I've made, but I think that would be the one envious part of it that I would love to say is that, my whole world, if I went to the college level, is going to be centered on coaching that basketball program. And I won't get all the other peripheral stuff out there that kind of gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah. And you trade one problem for another.
Exactly.
Really, in any kind of decision that you make. Like I said, bigger's not always better. And, at this level, people always say, well, you're not teaching, but you're recruiting, you're adding something else. But at least that affects our program directly, but it's a beast. And just the pace of the day, you think like all I have to do is just coach basketball, but there's so much that goes into that. You still have to find time to watch film, find time to meet with players, find time to do your own stuff, to run your own errands, to exercise. So it's not easy at this level, as far as time goes.
No, it can't be.
If anything, it's more.
So real quick, we'll touch on this and then we'll get into some other stuff. But so what's it been like? You've coached boys predominantly at the high school level, and all of a sudden you fly to Boone and you're coaching Division I girls basketball. How's that transition gone?
It's been really good. I tell you, I really, really enjoy our team. I think the biggest difference that I've found, and this is a very small sample size, but between, you know, high level high school boys basketball and Division I women's basketball, the basketball is really the same. It's really no different. I do think on the women's side, I think they're more receptive to coaching. Just overall, we had some super coachable guys at Catholic and really everywhere I've been. But I just see a more willingness to learn, because I don't think this is a game that comes completely natural to girls. So they're eager to learn, which has been good. But honestly, the basketball is all the same. A lot of times it just I have to remind myself that this is Division I basketball, because it just feels like a normal day. You know, I'm just in the gym and you're just pouring into kids and trying to make their experience a great one and teach them basketball. So yeah, I've had to pinch myself a couple times.
I don't blame you. Walking into the home center every day, I would pinch myself as well. That place is awesome.
It is.
So there's a third level to Mark Cassia. It is a component that is really, man, it's pretty cool. And I kind of dive into one, how you started this, but two, where do you see it going now that you've transitioned to App State? But you are the owner of Courtside Consulting, a consulting business for coaches. Doing a lot of different things with that: clinics, speaking engagements, consulting. Just I would assume from a virtual standpoint, or at least phone conversations or emails. Videos that you've posted on your website. For those of you out there, go to courtside-consulting.com and you're going to see a ton of videos and stuff on there that pretty much for the free things that kind of give you a taste and a sample of what you offer there, Coach. So talk to me a little bit about how Courtside Consulting got started.
Yeah, good question. Like changing jobs, it kind of happened with Whirlwind too. So we kind of started this pace and space style of offense. It was something that I really started getting into back when dribble drive became popular, kind of mid 2000s. I was running motion, but I was intrigued by the dribble drive, but wasn't completely sold on it, just because I felt like it lacked some player movement, lacked some ball movement. And honestly, a lot of coaches that run dribble drive reach out to me because we've kind of found a way to get that ball and player movement into there. So we started just, playing that style. And once we decided to go all in there, coaches would see us play, whether it was watching our film. I'd have coaches from another state call me and say they got our film and just ask me questions. And I would just share. Mm-hmm. I wasn't big on social media, rarely open Twitter and all that stuff. So it was really just more of teams, coaches watching our team play, interested in the style, reaching out. And like I said, I would just give everything away. And then I would hear from these coaches a few months later and they would say, hey, look, can you watch this possession or can you watch this game? And I quickly realized that this just kind of piecemealing some thoughts together and trying to help from afar just wasn't working. Because quite honestly, I'd watch their film or listen to their questions and just say, this isn't it. This isn't getting through. And if we're going to do this, let's do it right. And if I'm going to invest my time and resources and create these things for you, I just have to be compensated. So had some coaches reach out to bring me in to teach it to them, and then started to hop on Zoom. This was actually pre-COVID. I had Zoom fatigue even before COVID started. But so yeah, I was doing just webinars really daily, and it just started catching on, and it grew beyond my imagination, really. It was just something where I didn't get in it to make money or anything. It was just, if I'm going to be investing my time, I just wanted to be compensated for the time. And it's grown. We've had up to, 50 coaches in the mentorship program. I've done hundreds of Zooms. I've done hundreds of clinics. And now being at App State, I can continue to do that as long as obviously we're within the NCAA guidelines.
It's a really good thing, and like I said before I knew who you were, I knew at least your version of you through what I saw on Courtside Consulting and stuff that coaches were and it's kind of like groundswell, that brush fire, it just spreads along the ground. And it did you've done a really good job with that. So I appreciate you as a high school coach. It's really helped kind of, a couple of times when I've had questions, you were very open and quick to respond and things of that nature. Like, I said at the intro of this, we've been texting back and forth about different things since 2018, I think was the earliest one I remember. And we haven't really ever met each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's the cool part of this world now with the phones and the technology that we have is that we have this ability to do it. You have a Courtside Consulting coaching clinic, in essence. Your appearance is just Courtside Consulting, obviously, coming up on August 27th at the Hoosier Clinic in Indianapolis, Indiana, or just outside of Indianapolis. So talk to us a little bit about that clinic coming up.
Yeah, so I'll be talking about 0.5 basketball or 0-second decision making, which, I think is the glue that kind of holds your offense together. And it's, I get a lot of offensive questions, and to me, it's more of a style of play than it is an offense. So it's interesting when coaches I've never talked to before say they're running the same offense as me. I just thinking kind of good luck, because like I don't know how everything, because I don't share everything really.
Right.
But so I'm gonna kind of share how we teach that, what how we install that, how we rep it, and then talk a lot about two-way teaching through small-sided games. So I'll share a lot of different small-sided games and how we use that to rep 0.5, to teach spacing, but also to teach the defensive side of the ball too, which is a way, honestly, I've grown as a coach. I used to have like a defensive segment of practice, an offensive segment at practice, then try to put it together at the end. And very rarely do we do that now. Now it's just basketball, and I think the way that we've done that is look at the yin and yang of basketball, just being what we value offensively, we should take away defensively. And when you view the game through that lens, two-way teaching becomes really easy. So I'm going to share a lot of that at the clinic. And the clinic just has some phenomenal speakers. So I'm looking forward to learning too.
As I told you off air before we came on, I was trying to find any way in the world I could get up there to that. It just doesn't fit our schedule at all. But I'd love to be there. And I've talked to the folks that are running that clinic, and I'm hoping that there's going to be some type of way to buy a virtual pass or something like that comes out of it. Or, if nothing else, we can buy a video pass to the clinic after it's over, type stuff. But it's going to be a really good clinic. I wish you the best on that. But you started it there talking about your zero decision making offense and things of that nature. So I know that people out there really want to hear who is Mark Cassio and what is he so special? So we're going to find out. We're going to dive into all the things I think for me, I'm a 30-year high school coach. This will be my 31st season coming up. This when we start in August. So I'm a little old school, I guess, if that's the case, if you want to look at it that way. And I think a lot of coaches kind of get into their groove, into their, this is what I do. And it's hard for us to come out of what we do and learn new concepts. And I think Zoom and I think COVID forced that on some of us, a lot of us. I think for me personally, certainly, God, I don't want nobody to have to go through this pandemic again. And it looks like we're starting to go back through it again. But if there's one positive out of it that came from me is the connections that I've made. And all the Zoom meetings that were happening and things like that. But it gave me time away. I didn't have the daily grind at the school building every day. And I could really dive into some learning, some new concepts and things of that nature. So in the periphery, the last 2 or 3 years prior to the COVID shutdown, I'd heard about SSGs and I'd heard about, playing fast, race and space and pace. And, I'd heard about Chris Oliver and Alex Samara and, some of these guys, Doug Novak, yourself, I kind of heard about them, but I didn't really ever put a whole lot into it. And then, I talked to a local coach here in fact, you probably know him, Aaron Fernandez, does a lot with small-sided games. Brought him in. Me and him sat down and talked a lot about what is an SSG. And it just sort of, just exploded in my world. So really done a lot of studying and teaching on what this is with our program. So I want to get into it. So I think one of the biggest comments that I heard you make that really kind of sticks in my head is its emphasis on players versus plays. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, so I've kind of been lucky just growing up in a motion system. We were never big on set plays, just because our offense kind of had every type of attack, and we could always counter the defense no matter what the coverage was. And we would teach it with like 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4. So small sided games were fairly natural. But like you said, as coaches, we kind of get caught up into just doing the same thing every year. It's because what we know, and you should teach what you know. So there is some good in that. But I think while you're teaching what you know, you should always look at where the game is trending. When we were motion, the game was much more the passing game. You know, Bob Knight made that super popular. And then now the game has really evolved to playing off the bounce. So if that's where the game is trending, that's where kids want to play, then we should, embrace that style, because in anything that we do, whether it's X's and O's or how we run our program, meetings, whatever it is, we're always looking for a better way. And that's, again, while Angel and I hit it off because she has a tremendous growth mindset. So we're very similar in that regard of just, okay, we're doing this well. How can we make it great? We're doing it great. How can we make it elite? And that's really how all this evolved for me, was just finding a better way. I think most coaches coach the way they were coached, but if you were a high school basketball player 30 years ago, I don't think you would want your TV to look like it did 30 years ago, or I don't think you would want, your car to look like it did 30 years ago. So why should basketball look the same? So, exactly. A lot of coaches out there looking for better ways to do it. And I think that's great. And Twitter and Zoom and, just give us that opportunity to share.
I think the obvious answers are out there for this next question. But why do you think coaches fear some change and fear this model?
Great question. Because I get a lot of coaches reach out, and there's kind of two types. There's either ones that are, I think, a little overconfident, and just
no, surely not.
Most coaches think that their team's going to be better than they are. But also most coaches just think like, oh, okay, well, we can just, watch these couple things and then go install this, or we can go attend the clinic. And then that's what we're going to run this year, but they don't really know the troubleshooting part of it, the behind the scenes part of it. Mm-hmm. And I think the flip side of that's what scares people. So the other type of coach are the ones that I guess are more type A, where they don't know the drills to install. They don't know the order to install. So they're going to always going to revert back to the mean. It's like when you start a diet, or, you jump into exercising, it's like eventually you're going to revert back to the mean. So I think most coaches do that. And then also they lack a full commitment to it. I think once we hit adversity, we want to go back and try to, do things that worked in the past, or install a new set instead of just doing what you're doing better. So I got this from Fergus Connolly, but I don't think it's an original quote to him, but more is not better, better is better. So I think when we just, instead of adding things, and we can just commit to doing things better and going all in on this new style, I think there'll be growing pains, but that's all part of it. That's part of the growth mindset. When you're going through those, that means you're stretching yourself and getting better. Absolutely.
I would put myself in that category of scared and fear of it, like you were talking about, but I might add a subset category. It wasn't maybe so locked into what I was doing. I am 100% behind the growth mindset, and always trying to find something new, something, that's out there that would help our program and get better. But I think for me, it's always about knowing the why. Why am I doing this? What's the understanding of it? And I didn't feel comfortable with the understanding of it. And I think you had mentioned that in some other podcasts that you've done, and things that I've heard you say is just my understanding of it's scary because I don't understand all the nuances and the pieces of it. I'll give you a great example for me. The term SSG. Well, I'm a 30-year coach. I've never heard the term SSG. I didn't even know what the heck it was. So it scared me. But then, as you mentioned, I grew up in a motion offense. My first years of coaching in the early 90s, we put Duke's motion offense in, and we got Bobby Knight's tapes out from Indiana, and they were VCR tapes. Sorry. But we did. You're right. Exactly right. We taught it 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4 with a constraint. We just didn't call it constraints, and thankfully my high school head coach, and then the guy I worked for my first, 4 or 5 years in the business, I still to this day argue he's one of the best teachers of the game I've ever seen. And I think I go back to this part. He taught from a breakdown standpoint, but using the constraints SSG model. We just didn't call it that. It's a simple breakdown drills with different constraints or rules put in place to help achieve a certain aspect that you're wanting. And when I kind of could wrap my mind around that really, really helped solidify me. Okay, hey, I know exactly what we're talking about now. Talk about this part of it, Coach, how it evolves from advantage, disadvantage, big advantage, small advantage. That's kind of what you're trying to create with the offense, essentially, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, everything that we're doing is on offense is simply to try to create an advantage. That's it. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I mean, if we had one goal for offense, it's to play advantage basketball. So, and really at App, that's really all we've focused on right now. And I think as coaches, we get so caught up into how we're going to create that advantage. If it's dribble handoff and a ball screen or a down screen, and all that's great, but I've never seen a basketball game where a team never created an advantage. In a blowout basketball game, the losing team still played advantage basketball. They just might not have played it well, or the other team created far more advantages. But if we're going to go line up and play pickup, we can have no structure, and we're gonna have a number situation in transition. We're gonna bring 2 defenders to the ball in the half court. We're gonna create some kind of closeout. I think the elite teams know what to do once they have an advantage, or in what we call dominoes. And once you've created that advantage, or when you're in dominoes, offense is over. Now we're, like we joke, I always say, we're just hooping. Now it's just the fun part of basketball, where we're just going to drive, kick, swing the ball until we get a big advantage shot. And the way to do that is the ball can't stop moving. So once we create an advantage, once we start driving and kicking, we've got the defense in rotation. We cannot let them out. We've got them in jail. We have the upper hand. So we're just going to move that ball until we create a great shot. So the other part of that is that 0-second decision making, or what we call 0.5. So once we're in dominoes, it's all about 0.5, meaning that on the catch, we're going to shoot it, drive it, or move it without hesitation. And really where the game is trending, I think the Utah Jazz are elite at this, is reading the closeout before the catch. So even before the ball hits your hands, you know what you're doing with it. And it could be the wrong decision. I could catch and I have room to shoot a 3-point shot, but instead, I stampede the closeout. I get into the paint where I passed up a 3, but I didn't stick the ball. So as long as I can get that paint touch, we still have dominoes falling. So it all goes back to being the actor instead of being the reactor. I think when you catch and you put the ball above your head, or you go triple threat, you become very reactive. So we just want to remain the actor, remain aggressive. And once we get that advantage, we never want to lose it until we take a shot.
You said some really good stuff there. I think of decision-making. First thing that I thought of initially when all this stuff is, how do you teach decision-making? Doesn't that sort of happen organically throughout the stuff? And then I think I heard you say something, or maybe it was Chris Oliver. I don't exactly remember, because it's been, a few years since I started kind of diving into this stuff, but decision-making is a skill. Just like ball handling, just shooting and things of that nature. So you instinctively put drills together to work on decision making, and I think that's where some of the SSGs come from, breakdown drills, if you will. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so even the word skill is interesting, because I've changed the lens in which I use that word, because I think early in my career I did way more technique stuff. Where we would go do passing drills thinking that we were become a better passing team. But if me and you are just lined up on the court and passing the ball back and forth, there's really no skill involved in that. That is just we might be teaching you a new type of pass, but once you know it, you've got to be able to apply it. So really skill is technique plus game context. And the way to get the game context would be to add defense. That's the easiest way to add it. So, you've got to be able to start, stop, handle the ball, pass, shoot before you can really do anything. So it all starts from a skill base. And then you've got to learn how to space the floor before you run offense. So once you check those boxes, now it's all about decision making. When we create that advantage, can we punish the defense? So we want to get defense in the coverage. And if they get in the coverage, we got to make them pay for getting in the coverage. So it's just a mentality of, we're going to punish the defense, but you can only do that if you're a good decision maker. And I think the best way to teach it is football coaches do a far better job of this because of the nature of the game, is they teach where to look, especially like if you're playing quarterback pre-snap, it's just all about what you see. Or if you're playing, in the backfield or the defensive backfield in football, it's like your eyes are always going to move before the snap of the ball. You have cues where you look. And I think from a basketball standpoint, when we teach players where to look and what to look for, what perceptual cues lead to what decision, I think that's where it becomes really fun. And you can use small-sided games to create those conditions. And like you mentioned, constraints. If we want to emphasize a certain skill or a certain read, then we just add a constraint to that small-sided game. So I think, I don't know, this kind of comes more natural to me, and I kind of maybe just think it does for everybody. But a lot of the questions I get are like, what constraints do you use for this small-sided game? Or what small-sided game would you use to teach this? And really, you could use any small-sided game, but you remove or you add different constraints, and you're going to get different results. So really, you're just shaping the environment that your team would play in to yield a certain decision or a certain read or skill that you want to rep.
For me, the literal crystal clear light bulb moment that put all of these concepts and thoughts that you're talking about into fruition for me, where I got it. It's like that algebra moment when the teacher finally puts something on, you go, oh my God, I finally get it. Exactly. Was the term reverse engineering. So I was struggling. I was like that, what you said. I want to tell me all your SSGs. I need 1,000 SSGs, and I want to find the perfect SSG for every situation. And then I thought, somebody mentioned the term, it might have been you, who knows, reverse engineering. What is it you're trying to accomplish? And then figure out an SSG that fits that mold. Make up an SSG that fits that mold. Take a game that you typically play in practice and add a constraint or a rule to it that forces that whatever it is that you're trying to get or look for. And when I did that, it was like, oh my God, all the dominoes, and I hate to use that pun because it's not really relevant to this, but right, the dominoes that fall into place for this. And it's just that crystal clear moment. And something you just mentioned right there before I brought into this lead up was teaching through cues. I think that's something that you say a lot, and I love it. And I think it's a great concept. So rather than teaching plays, as you in on your lead in of this whole episode, we don't teach plays, we kind of teach concepts, but in doing so, you're using cues. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So like I said, everything is to create an advantage. So once we create that advantage, and we, the thing with conceptual or concepts is that we have predetermined actions that we're going to use, like we're going to use a ball screen or a handoff or, a off ball screen. Those are all predetermined, and we can rep those and teach those. The difference between structured offense and a conceptual offense is players can use either any action that they want. So having them understand certain triggers or understand that certain spots within the floor lead to certain actions is one part of it. That way we can flow and they can have some ownership of what we run. And then once we do that, it is the decision-making part once we're in dominoes. So some of those cues would be, for it's kind of skill / concepts. Some things that have been really good for us is when bodies are in front, we play off 2 feet. The goal is to always get to the rim off 1 foot. It just, especially at the Division I level, or when you're playing against really good teams, that might happen 3 or 4 times a game, where you just have a big advantage, wide open layup. So if bodies are in front, we want to play off 2, and that could be a stride stop finish, that could be a paint pull, a pro hop. But when there's traffic in there, the number one thing we want is to gain balance, whether it's balance on a finish, or one thing we've talked a lot about at App with our stops is if I stop unbalanced, I now have to make a decision immediately or I'm going to travel. If I stop balanced in the paint, now I've got 3 full seconds to make the right decision. So bodies in front, play off 2 has been really good for us. Anytime on a drive, if we see chest, that means that we're likely going to pitch the ball. It means that a secondary defender has committed to stopping our drive. So now it just goes back into, we brought 2 defenders to the ball. So now we've got to punish. How do we do that? If we see chest in front of us and go off 1 foot, that's where your charges come in. So if we see a chest, we stop and pitch it, because now we've created an advantage. If we see shoulder, we keep driving because it means that they're stunning or help is late. So just, those cues have been really good for us as far as our decision-making goes. There's other things like, when the ball goes to the corner, that typically leads to a 2-out or any kind of paint touch. We want to go paint to great. So when we get a paint touch, we want to kick out and go 1 more. So we say don't drive the drive, or go 2 passes out of the paint, which is an automated response for us. Any paint touch, we either want to catch and shoot or move it on that first kick, because if we drive it, we've already brought defense into the paint. We want to create space. So a rule is if you cut in the space, you got to cut out the space. Or if you close space, you have to reopen it. So when I drive into space and get into the paint, I've attacked space, but I've also closed it off because I've brought everybody into the paint. So a way to reopen that space would be to kick. We say reshape the floor, which means just get the heck out of the paint. And then when we go 2 out, we're creating some closeouts there. So I think when we create cues like that or sticky language, it creates those automated responses where we can execute the technical and tactical aspects of the game quickly, which to me is what playing fast is all about. It's not necessarily that we're going to do anything that's super intricate or special. We're just going to do it really fast, and hopefully play faster than the defense.
So I'm going to throw a semi-scenario at you. You tell me if I'm way off or if I about got it or if you hit it right dead on the head. You got me? Right. So started using the teaching through cues a lot more this summer with our team. And initially early on, we would have some audible 1 word, maybe short phrase cues. And our kids initially thought, well, if he's saying that means that I've got, it's almost like in their mind, they thought it was a play. Like we had to go run a play that did that, as opposed to looking at the cues. And it slowed us down, actually slowed our offense and our decision-making down because they were trying to play so too rigid. When I started getting them to understand, what I'm telling you is when you catch the ball and you start downhill, we've given you 2 or 3 teaching cues of what to look for. It's going to help solidify your decision-making process so that you're not guessing. You have a script essentially to follow based on these cues. And then once they got that, they would start driving and they would look at me kind of funny. And I was like, for one of us is bingo. We call it bingo. And then the option was ball screen. Out of it, that's your ball screen look. When you see that, you need to go ball screen. So they would come in and go, I should have bingoed. Yep, bingo. So initially, when I would say bingo, they would start going bingo, bingo, and they'd run around. And I'm like, no, you're off. So am I headed in the right direction there, Coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and I share the same thing. I've had players tell me like, especially at the high school level, we'd get football players and they're so used to running plays that they would come to me and say like, Coach, like I'm having trouble learning all the plays. And I'm like, well, we haven't installed a play yet. So I'm having trouble learning
I
them
love
too.
that.
You know? But that's just how that's just there. It's more of a terminology thing, you know? So I would explain to them that, you know, we're teaching offensive actions that create an advantage, or, you know, instead of actions, it could just be solutions. Like
There you go.
if I drive and I see chest, I could pitch, but what if I could euro and score, or pro hop and score? Well, those are just two, or jump skip to this corner, or pitch to strong side corner. Those are just solutions that we're helping, you know, teach you, like you said, to improve your decision making. And then, you know, with like your ball screen stuff is, that would just be the next action, you know, the play after the play. So if ball gets here, or if we use this certain trigger to cue action, we could get a ball screen. And what I love about offense is giving players kind of an A-B option to where, you know, what I ran at Catholic in the high school level, and we're going to incorporate a lot of this at App, was just, if I have the ball, I can do A or B. It doesn't matter because they're both predetermined actions that we practice, and the other 4 players know how to play off this action. But I can be really decisive because I'm not thinking of a play that the coach wants me to do. I'm just thinking of what I'm comfortable doing. So if I pass to you, I can do A or B. Doesn't really matter what I do as long as I do it decisive, because that's going to maintain flow and keep that ball moving. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right on. Is the one word cues. I love anything you can use with one syllable is great. And then I think the next part of that is that's the only language that we use. So one thing that came up in the consulting group is I was texting back and forth with the coach in there, and he was talking about a better way to teach something. And really the way he was doing it was great. And I told him, you just got to keep, you know, to use App State language, just keep pounding the stone. It's just keep doing it. And there's going to be a breakthrough, but you've got to make sure that you're super consistent with your language. If in the example that came up was, he was talking about small advantage, big advantage, neutral. He said he really wanted his team to understand neutral better. So I just told him, like, asked him, is that common language in a practice? Or is that just something like the coaches understand, but we don't use it with the team? And really, as a coach, there's always going to be a gap between what you know and what your players know. But we want to shrink that gap to where we're all seeing the game through the same lens. And to do that, we got to be very consistent. So a bad shot should just be called a neutral shot, or it can't be a tough shot. That would be a neutral shot. And when you use that same terminology day in and day out, it just becomes ingrained in your DNA, which would really help.
Coach, you know, without getting into specifics, which we haven't done, we talked a lot about SSGs without specifically mentioning any SSGs. And we did talk about, you know, reverse engineering, essentially getting an SSG to fit what you do. But with that being said, I think I'd said this to you off air, but want to touch base about this a little bit. But we struggled defending the ball, guarding the ball. So I looked on your website and actually heard you talk about it in a previous pod. But a drill that you like to do a lot, or like to do it when you were at Catholic anyway, is the 3-on-3 cat drill, which I think for those of you out that are kind of touching on or exploring SSGs, I think that's the easiest way to get the point across. Is it's a breakdown drill, but you giving it a name on some level that your kids recognize, identify immediately. I can go up there and say, all right, we're going 3-on-3 cat, bam, they can jump in and go. But for us, 3-on-3 cat was revolutionary in helping us defend the ball a little bit better. Our ball pressure became better. And that is a drill where we played 3-on-3 and there was zero help side, none whatsoever. And I love what you said in your podcast with Chris Oliver on Basketball Immersion, was that no, you wouldn't come in every day and do that for the whole entire practice and forget the concepts of help side. But for a brief, 5 to 7, 8 minute period, maybe in a daily practice, they're not going to forget the concepts of help side, but that will improve your defending the ball. So I took it up, put it in practice the next day, did 3-on-3 cat. And after about 3-4 days, it was amazing how much our guarding the ball improved. So talk about that a little bit, about how SSGs can help you in that situations like that.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that like you're not playing help, which as a defensive coach, that might drive you nuts. But
Yes.
But there's really 3 phases to defense. Like if you just take out all the action stuff, you're either guarding the ball, you're either guarding one pass away or more than one pass away. So you're working on 2 of those 3 things. You're working on guarding the ball and you're working on guarding one pass away. So you're still working on 2/3 of your defense. And what you're doing is you're getting better at those because that's the emphasis. So you're just kind of cutting deeper into those 2 concepts. So really 3-on-3 cat is really just 3-on-3 no help. And I got the term cat from my man, Justin Franks, who is a former defensive football coach. And it's kind of the equivalent. He made this analogy of the equivalent of just coaches that roll the ball out in basketball. There's football programs that it's just, hey, everybody guard their cat. Like it's man to man. Like don't let your cat get open. So the cat D in basketball would be don't let your cat score, and teams that are super athletic can do that because 1, they guard the ball well, and 2, they never bring 2 to the ball. So it's hard to create an advantage. You gotta win with small advantage shots, which is tough over the course of 32 or 40 minutes. So that one's a great one because you can play one-on-one on the ball. You have the individual responsibility that no one's coming to help. So if I give up an advantage, it's my fault and only my fault. And also the players off the ball are getting reps at denial. So if I give up a catch, well, I didn't do my job, right? I should force a back cut. And I think it's a more efficient way to play one-on-one. Not that we don't just play standard one-on-one, but if you're playing 3-on-3 cat, you've got 6 players involved in the drill. And it's basically 3 rounds of one-on-one going at the same time, where anytime there's a catch, I'm playing one-on-one. Anytime I'm not guarding the ball, I'm working on my denial in the passing lane. So super efficient. And it's a great way to emphasize, guarding the ball, denial on defense, but also a great way to emphasize offensively is you're going to get some back cuts. You're going to have to make a one-on-one move to create your own advantage, which there's a time and place for that. You're going to have to score with contact at the rim more than likely. And then you're going to have to be able to stop, pivot, and find an open man on the perimeter. And then those other players are going to have to get open against pressure defense. And then last thing, talking about sticky language, is at Catholic, whenever we wanted to give up no threes, right? Let's say we're up 3 with 10 seconds to go or something. There's no fouls to give or whatever it is. If there was the no 3 scenario that came up, we would just say cat. And our guys, because we ran that cat drill, they knew that we're not helping, which means we're not going to give up a 3. We'll give up a 2. So just using that consistent language again, it's another great example of how we don't really have to install a no 3 defense. We just use one word and everybody's on the same page.
When I heard you explain that drill before in the past, I think one of those revolutionary moments for me kind of hit me in the chest a little bit, but because I clearly saw myself do exactly what you were talking about here, what I'm getting ready to mention. And I would imagine I would challenge each of our listeners here when they hear me say this, think about your own practices. And I bet you do the same exact thing. So you're in practice, you're playing 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5, whatever it is. Kid gets beat off the dribble, helps slow getting there, and kid gets a shot, good shot, whatever. And you're pissed at the help side defender. You're ripping the help side. You're screaming at your kids about getting the help, call, communication, and you've neglected the skill that really broke the whole thing down, which is guarding the ball. And I think about me, I'm upset with our kids all the time. I'm talking to them about, man, we got to guard the ball. But every time there's a situation where it happens, I was always getting on the help side about not being there. I never really corrected the situation. So this drill helped me a ton in correcting the situation, correcting the error that was causing all the problems. Not saying we're great at it now by no stretch of imagination, but we at least know the why, which to me is important. Know why we're doing it.
Yeah, I think as coaches, we have to be committed to solving the right problem. So it's easy to jump on that help side defender, but the problem is that you got blown by on the ball. When you get blown by on the ball, help's almost always going to be late. We've got to put up a fight on the ball. So I think when you design your defensive system, design it from the basket out. Where's our help going to come from? But then when you do your autopsy, always do it from the ball in. And most of the time, the breakdown is going to be on the ball. I know for us in the past playing pressure man, we never helped ball side. It was almost always the on-ball defender. Either our position or our stance was too open, or we just lacked pride on the ball and we relied on our help. And that's the catch-22 when you're a really good help team. The on-ball defender can relax a little bit, but then, if we want to bring two defenders to the ball offensively, rule of defense should be to keep one defender on the ball, because that means we're minimizing the advantage that the opponent creates on us. So, a lot of good teaching points in there, and a great example of the inverse relationship between offense and defense too.
I think for us, where we get in trouble a lot of times is if in our man we can't guard the ball. And it might not necessarily be that we're giving up layups, we're giving up dribble penetration, but we end up giving up wide open threes. And I think a lot of it goes, I'm always on the help. I'm always talking about our slow rotations, our piss poor closeouts and stuff. But what I've neglected to realize is the ultimate root cause of the problem was we didn't guard the ball. I think you mentioned it, we got really good at help. I think most people would say, man, you really gonna have to play offense well, space the floor well. And that's where we get hurt, is when teams get really good at spacing the floor, because we're really good at help. What are we not really good at? Well, we're not real good at guarding the ball, right. And we're not real good at our secondary closeouts off dominoes. And there's a reason why that is. So I think if we can stop that initial dribble penetration, that initial error that we're creating, it will help some of our other issues that tend to come up from time to time.
Yeah, and you had a good point of. You don't always get beat on the help, you get beat on the recovery.
Correct.
And you said teams, that space the floor well, tough to defend. And I think as coaches, we can overcomplicate things. So just as the offensive lens, whether it's, man offense, zone offense, full court against the press, spacing and ball movement is going to be the enemy of any defense. So if we space the ball well, if we generate some ball speed, I think defense is going to break down at some point and going to give you an advantage. And then we're back to the beginning of the conversation where we're in dominoes and we have the upper hand and we're going to get a good shot.
Coach, I got two last things I want to touch on before we kind of say goodbye. And that is, I don't know if you can see my board. I know you probably can't read the writing on it, but right here, key performance indicators and protection plans.
Okay.
That's our goal for the summer, is we wanted to come up with our key performance indicators, both for a team and individuals. And we wanted to come up with our protection plans. And I have written down in a subset underneath protection plans: Nash, Barclays, donuts, movers, and spacers. And now I hope I'm saying something to you that you're getting a grin out of it, but I bet you some of my listeners like, what? Just as you mentioned before, foreign language. I'm speaking a foreign language. Again, I think this was something that was really good for me. So first off, talk to me a little bit about protection plans.
Yeah. So, one, let's look at what impacts winning the most. And that's either points per possession or your field goal percentage, however you want to look at it. We always want to get a shot. We want to get a shot that we really value. So I think the easiest way to do that would be to improve your shot selection. And protection plans is basically when we drive and we're neutral, meaning that I've driven the ball through the elbow and I lose my advantage, or I never gained an advantage. What do I do now? And I know at the youth level, it's either take a bad shot or leave our feet and pray that somebody's open and we can throw that thing to a teammate. It usually ends up in the third row. So protection plans is basically plan Bs. I drive with the intent to score. I don't have an opportunity to score. So what can I do? Barkley would be turn that drive into a post up. A Nash would be, we say, when in doubt, keep the bounce, because now we're not going to, if we drive neutral and stop, well, we haven't forced any help. So now it's tough to kick out. So Nash would be another way to find a solution. Keep your dribble alive, dribble underneath the backboard, come out the other side, either have a shot for yourself, or maybe that opens up something for a teammate, but it's a great way to maintain flow. And then a donut is what people call a back pivot or a rondo. That is just your stride stop when your defender's going with speed, where now we can turn, pivot into a shot. And then that pivot, even if you don't get your donut shot, that pivot is a screen for yourself. It increases your vision of the floor. So, when you get stuck, instead of panicking, you just pivot and pivot and pivot until you find a kick out or some kind of solution.
And I think the key to that relies in figuring out what kids do best, right? Am I right? You try to identify. So Mark Cassia was one of my players, and he typically drives and gets himself in trouble. And I'm gonna see which one of these he's most adapted to, and that's going to become his personal protection plan. When he gets in trouble, he's going to have a go-to of one of these. I don't think, am I wrong? They don't all learn them all, right?
Well, we teach them all to everybody, because maybe you have a sophomore that's playing at the varsity level, where they haven't fully developed. They're not big, strong yet, where they're probably not going to be a big Barkley guy. But
Correct.
Your bigger, stronger players, your slower drivers might take to the Barkley. But that sophomore that's not big and strong yet, he might utilize more of a Nash or a donut. But by his senior year, he might be a Barkley guy. And it's not anything that we really assign the people.
Okay.
It's just what suits their game, like your guards that like just little quick guards that you can't keep in front, and they just go 100 miles per hour. Like I coached Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's a running back for the Kansas City Chiefs for a couple years, and he had one speed, and that was super fast. So he's going to be a Nash guy, because to Barkley, you got to be able to change speed and really play at different paces. That wasn't him. So he's just going to go. And if he doesn't have anything, he's going to keep going like a good running back should. So I think players just are drawn to what comes more natural to them, but you never know about development. So we're going to teach them all. And by their senior year, maybe they can Nash and Barkley, which makes them even more dangerous.
That's a great point, because I think my concept of that was I was not necessarily directly assigning one protection plan to a kid, but in essence, I was sort of emphasizing to one player or another, this is you. You need to be looking at Barclays. You need to be looking at Nash's, things of that nature. You need to be looking at the Rondos, donuts. And the funny thing is, and you answer this question for me a little bit here. I got some funny looks when we first started talking about it. What do you mean I can't go flying into the lane and jump up and shoot a fadeaway? What do you mean I can't up and under 17 times? And I was like, you're taking terrible shots. And so when I started introducing this concept of protection plans, I got the stinky eye a couple of times with some kids.
Yeah. And it goes back to that language, it's like when we can clearly define what a neutral shot is. It's like, if we want to force neutral shots defensively, we shouldn't be okay with taking those offensively. So all we're trying to do is just improve the quality of the shot, so again, goes back to finding solutions to improving that effective field goal percentage, because that's what's going to impact winning more than anything else. So, but yeah, there is some, anytime you change, just like we talked earlier about coaches being weary of change, players will too. But once that starts to click, and they see that they're getting better shots, scoring more points as an individual and as a team, the buy-in comes pretty quick after that.
I think their initial knee-jerk reaction is when I was telling them that they thought I was telling them that they can't play, that they weren't very good. And I was trying to tell them, no, I'm trying to give you more options to help you become better. And once you understand that you can't just go barreling in the lane out of control, and you're 6'1" and you're trying to shoot as high as you can jump faders over kid at 6'6", 6'7", that's probably not the best shot for us, nor you. And well, I can make it. I get it that you can make it 2 out of 10 times, but is that the most efficient way for us to play basketball? No, coach, it's not. So that's, you have to kind of start. I'm trying to give you other options so that you can maybe make 6 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or something along that nature. So along that, I think that leads into the part of this thing is key performance indicators, the KPIs, if you will. So talk to us a little bit about that and how you get to those.
Yeah. So I'm actually working on something right now for our program and just developing a KPI in every phase of the game. So that is just going to be if we take out, the results, if we take out the winning and losing, it's just a way to measure if we're doing this, it means we're winning in that phase or the game is being played the way we want it to be. So it's important that KPIs are measurable because there's some gray area, I was actually thinking about this last night, like a KPI for half court offense. It can't be, how many advantages did we create? That's a good one, I think. But even if you create an advantage, it doesn't mean that you're getting a shot. We Correct. Could turn it over. We could pass up a shot. So it's like you got to really narrow your thinking. Transition offense for right now, I have ours that the ball crosses half court in 4 seconds or less. I think if we're measuring how many times the ball crosses half court in 4 or less, if it's happening a lot, we're doing our job. If it's not, it means we're either playing slow or our opponent's doing something to take us out of that. So we've got to make some kind of adjustment. It might just be doing what we do better, or it might be having to actually, tactically change something. But yeah, I mean, having a KPI for a certain drill, what's most important for this drill. So for 3-on-3 cat, the KPI might be just on ball defense, or it might be our angle on the ball or our distance from the ball. Just something that's going to give our guys or girls one thing to focus on so we can cut deep into that one concept.
That's awesome. And I'll ask you this, because I know, again, like I said, I think early on in this interview, I'd mentioned that the majority of my listeners are probably high school coaches. So you have that now at kind of both levels. So at the high school level, when you were at Catholic, you may have been blessed to have a multitude of staff and assistants and managers and things of that nature. But I find myself half the time I'm the only one at practice. And that and 2 of my assistant coaches have, I don't want to say regular jobs. That's a terrible way to say it, but normal 9 to 5. They don't work at the school, offsite jobs. So I know they don't have the time during the day to go in and watch video and study video. So at the high school level, how do you measure these things? How do you come up with a key performance indicator, but then be able to actually do it and measure it?
Yeah. If you're looking at game stuff, it becomes film. Mm-hmm. You could have, if those coaches that aren't as lucky as us to coach basketball all the time, they can do it on the bench, maybe in the game, just, mm-hmm. Or a manager, or even, I know back in the day, our JV team would keep stats for the varsity game.
Oh, wow.
When we didn't, so JV would play, they would go change clothes, sit right behind the bench. 2 guys would have one stat chart, and they would chart the game. It wasn't 100% accurate because it was 16-year-olds or 15-year-olds doing it.
Who are nowadays texting the girlfriend.
Exactly. Back then there were no cell phones. Exactly. Now there's a lot more distractions during the game, but it keeps them engaged in the game, and it's just a way where you can utilize your program. But film is a great way to do it too, and that's kind of where KPIs came from as far as on an individual basis. For me, it was, if we're going to watch this player play on film, what's the one thing that's going to stick out for him to do that he's, fulfilling his role for us, So if you're a shooter, it's like, is he running all the way to the corner to space the floor? When we drive, is he making the right spacing read? Or if you're a non-shooter, are you finding opportunities to ghost cut? Whatever it is, it's just, we're going to look at this one thing on film. If you're doing this one thing really well, as coaches, we're going to be happy. So that's kind of where KPIs on an individual level came from. But I think team KPIs are great too. It's something that I'm really diving into this offseason.
Yeah, that was kind of my moniker over this offseason was, and I think I made it too broad. And that's why I'm really wanting to kind of hone it in a little bit. And when I say too broad, for me, I was trying to focus on KPIs and protection plans for both the individual and the team. So it was beginning to get a little overwhelming. So with that being said, which one would you lean to? In other words, would you develop the KPIs for the individual first or for the team first, and then later on add the ones for the players?
I would go team first because I think that's going to clearly define your style of play. You know, how do we want to play in each 4 phases of the game? Let's make sure we have something that's measurable there. And then as you get to know your team better, as roles start to develop, then you can get that iron out the individual KPIs. And I would you could even give the players their own input on what their KPI would be. You know, the more decisions they make for themselves, the more ownership, the more belief they'll have in it.
Yeah, if they don't have buy-in, they're certainly not going to try to do it in a ball game or a practice scenario. So I agree with you there. One last thing we'll touch on, Coach, and we'll put a bow on this episode. So I have to fully admit I'm guilty. I stole something from you.
Okay.
So don't get mad at me. I think you're probably going to want me to steal it though. So listening to you talk, doing some research on you, things of that nature, and I don't exactly the 100% the official way you mentioned it, but marginal gains, the list of marginal gains, keeping a little journal with you and a list of marginal gains. When I first heard you say that, I was like, what the hell's this dude talking about? Mm-hmm. And then when I heard you go through it, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I actually found a couple of things to add to our list of marginal gains. And they are so insignificant in terms of what they are, but the impact they have on your program are, you don't even, I don't know if you can measure it sometimes. So I keep a little journal. Hold on a minute. Everywhere I go, it's right here. That was my carry wood, chop water, whatever book. In other words, keep this little journal right here. It's in my duffel bag everywhere I go. And I'll be driving down the road. I'll be at the mall or something. Oh, there's a marginal, and I'll add something to the list. And it's been great for us. It's really helped. It's almost exciting for me because I want to see how these impact our program. So the coaches that are out there listening are going, okay, I'd like to know more about what he's talking about. So talk to us a little bit about the marginal gains.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to growth mindset and just how can we do this better? So we found ways to just, how we travel. It might be, what time we get to the game or what can we do to make our travel a little bit more efficient. One thing we've talked about is is when we're in the hotel room, having their temperature on 65 degrees in their room, because that is optimal sleep temperature. So just little things like that, where over the course of the season, if we're getting a little bit more sleep on every single road trip because the room temperature is better, then we're winning, because offensively, we're trying to always create advantages. What I've learned very early as a head coach is we're not really good enough to just do things normal and win at a really high level. So how can we create advantages over our opponents in every single aspect of our program? So it could be hydration. Every player has their own water bottle. Every player has a clear water bottle. So as coaches, we can see if they're drinking their water. Because if you have, the normal Gatorade or Powerade water bottles that are blue or green or whatever, you don't know how much water is in there. So I can have a water bottle, but if I'm never drinking it, I'm not hydrating. Another hydration thing we did is they had to fill their water bottle and complete it. They had to empty it before they left every day. Gosh, there's been so many marginal gains that we've made that I probably just take for granted, even so, like the way our players walked into the gym at Catholic, we would do an ankle warm up whenever they came out of our locker room. I would put the balls far away from the locker room, so they had to walk from the locker room to the balls. And when they did that, they would walk on their toes, their heels, the outside of their foot, their inside of their foot, just to strengthen and warm up their ankles just a little bit. And I felt like if they took 10 steps of on their heels, on their balls of their feet, inside, outside, that's 40 reps of a ankle strengthening exercise every single time they walked into the gym. So those things just become, standard behavior for us. But when other coaches see that, they're like, hey, what are your guys doing? And to us, it was just like, oh, that's our ankle warm up. But those, like you said, those marginal gains, they're small decisions can make really, really big gains for you. So I would challenge any coach to just look at what they do and just ask, how can we do it better? And then the next year, make it even better. And then before you know it, you got a lot of things that are just running in your program that are just passed down from class to class.
Not too many people that are teams that I play maybe listening to this, but so one thing that I think hit me, man, it was awesome. It was really good. So I thought, well, we do a weight workout and then we take 30 to 40 minutes kind of transitioning between, we go in the locker room, we talk about practice for the day, and then we go on the floor for practice. And I just didn't feel like the kids were hydrating well. They weren't, and I'm like, guys, you need to make sure you get some protein in you. You need to make sure you're doing things well. So I talked to our school cafeteria manager, and I told her what was going on, what we were doing. I said, now, granted, all this stuff's going to be after school, and they do a little bit of an after-school snack program for kids in our community. Well, she agreed to provide every kid on my team with 2 chocolate milks and a banana and a protein bar. So every day, when the school bell rings, I'm going to go up to the cafeteria and I'm going to get this crate, and it's going to have 2 chocolate milks, a banana, and a protein bar, so that when we get finished the weight workout and we got that 30, 40-minute transition to practice, they're going to have 2 chocolate milks and a banana and a protein bar before we go up on the floor. And then, like you said, I stole the idea of the clear water bottle. I'm going to have them fill their clear water bottle up, and before they leave practice that night, that clear water bottle's got to be empty. And I'm hoping that what we will find is, as the season wears on, we are not as wore down. And we're able to recover better for the next day's practice.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. We did something really similar with the chocolate milk. I would just go buy them from the cafeteria once a week. We'd load up a cooler, and then everybody would get one. And if you don't have money in your program, it just maybe every parent pays an extra $20, and that'll last you for a month. Or you might have one parent that has some kind of connection with a grocery store or something where you can get them at cost. But
exactly,
people want to help your program, and they want to support when they know exactly what it's being supported to. So instead of just asking parents for a donation, if you go to somebody that has some kind of connection and they can use their connection to help the program, I'm sure they'd be more than willing to do that. So explore every avenues, and don't miss an opportunity to ask for help.
I think one that you had mentioned specifically, I think you said that you and your wife went to the grocery store and figured out what it cost you guys to make your team's favorite pregame meal. And I think you said it was $63, I believe is what you said when I heard you say it. So you asked a parent that wanted to help, can you donate $63 or whatever it was for our team's favorite pregame meal? And then they would give you that money, and you would go buy the stuff, and you and your wife would cook the pregame meal for them.
Yep. And, I forget what the exact number was. But it was an easy way for, my wife. I think for all coaches, getting your family involved in the program is great. And it was a cheap way where we could feed, up to like 30 people for, $60 or whatever. It's like $2 a person. And then, like I said, when people know where the money's going, they're more than willing to help usually.
Absolutely. Coach, this has been a great episode. We didn't get too deep into the weeds, and that was kind of by design. I think I want people to be able to reach out to you through, personal contact with your email or maybe through Courtside Consulting, whichever way, if they have any more questions. So before we wrap up, give us the ways that people can contact you if they have any further questions, want to get more involved with you.
Yeah. Easiest ways would be on Twitter at Coach Cassio is the handle, or via email, just markcassio@gmail.com. Coaches reach out all the time. Love building relationships and getting to know coaches from all over the place. And if I can help in any way, that's what this is all about. So feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. And coaches, just so you know, I made the mistake early on in this process. I spelled it like the watch, CASIO, and there is an extra C in there. There's 2 C's in there.
Yeah.
So don't forget that second C when there. Is that right, Coach?
That's right. CASCIO. So hit me up on Twitter or email, and we'll get to connecting.
Absolutely. And I'm on the coaches association board, and I made a recommendation to have you and Coach Angel come down to the North Carolina Coaches Clinic next year in Greensboro and speak. Hopefully they will take my advice and reach out to you guys. I think it's a win-win situation for both parties, and I know you'll do a phenomenal job, as will Coach Angel.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And Coach, I enjoyed it. I look forward to getting to know you a little bit better as the season wears on, because I'll be seeing a lot of your ball games. We'll be seeing a lot of each other. So good luck to you, and thanks for being on our show today.
Yeah, man, this was great. I really enjoyed this, and like you said, we'll be seeing more of each other. So looking forward to that.
Absolutely. All right, Coach. Thank you.
Thanks.
We thank you again for listening to the Elevation Basketball Podcast. Give us a shout on social media, and we look forward to having you back again for another episode of the Elevation Basketball Podcast.